Okay. So this, by their name, you're saying that the elements are very much implicit. They're not in your subconscious, and that they're working in the background, and that you've created a survey that allows someone to basically extract. What does it measure exactly? So for trust, what would it measure exactly, that survey?
So the way the survey is designed is that there's 3 situations for each element.
Okay.
And the situations were written based on a validated scale for that element. So there's a validated trust scale.
Okay.
So what that means is that somebody has said, we think this is what measures trust. They go out, they get a bunch of people to fill it out. They statistically hammer it. They redo it a bunch of times. They revalidate it. So finally they come out with these items that say this all measures trust.
Okay.
Okay, and what I did was I created, for example, 6 trust scenarios, and then I had hundreds of people fill it out and make sure through statistical testing that my situations actually were validated, did demonstrate trust or fairness or whichever one we were testing. So the whole thing has been validated. Probably around 1,200 people participated in it. So it's a validated questionnaire.
Okay.
And so each one, so there's one on trust, and the options that they choose from, one is a positive, one is a negative, and one is a distractor. And you get interesting information no matter what choice people make.
Okay.
And so what happens in the end is, again, we use statistical analysis to say which one of the elements is contributing to this particular score that you're getting right now. And there's all kinds of analysis we can do. It just depends on the client's pocketbook and willingness to pay for my statistician.
So just if we can just go through each one and forgive me if I'm being presumptuous, because some seem quite obvious, and maybe a few I'd like to explore with you. So I think trust is understood. The leader-follower relationship, trust is something that I think many people would understand. Fairness, how can you make that a bit more concrete? How do you give that a measure, for example, fairness?
Yeah, I mean, fairness is an interesting one because everybody defines fairness differently, and people basically will tell you when they feel that they've been treated fairly. They may not be able to tell you why, but they can tell you whether they've been treated fairly. And so, for some people, is you treat everybody the same. That's fair. For other people, it's you give people what they need. That's fair. Or it's what people have contributed. They get something as a result of that. But there's also organizational fairness, and that comes into play in my testing as well. Because there's fairness of sharing of information, there's fairness of treatment. Are you being treated fairly, respectfully? They overlap, by the way. So trust, even though it's obvious, every single one of the elements plays into trust.
Okay.
So if I feel respected, I trust you. If I think you're being fair, I'll trust you. So again, there's an overlap with them, but we measure them quite separately. And so fairness, the biggest challenge with fairness and the biggest difficulty for any organization is to define what fairness is for that organization and how are you going to measure yourself against that. And I don't think people have that discussion.
So, but when it comes to the survey, it's the same questions regardless of your organisation, regardless
Correct.
of where you sit geographically or whatever. At the end of the day, it's the same survey, and basically gets the same analysis.
Yes.
So fairness. When you look at fairness in the survey, when you do the survey or someone does a survey, it doesn't matter of the organisational culture. It's independent of the geography, the culture. The survey is the same regardless of all those dynamics.
Yeah.
And the relationship.
Absolutely.
Self-control, is that the same as emotional intelligence, or is that something different?
Emotional intelligence is a piece of it, but it's also impulse control, which is interesting, because impulse control, what that means is that, obviously everybody knows that from an addictive standpoint, but it's also, do you do the tasks that are tiresome and you don't want to do, and are you able to, go through all the nitty-gritty, yucky work that has to be done? or do you delay those? Do you avoid them? So, self-control is about management of your emotions, but it's also management of your choices in getting stuff done.
Okay. So you have empathy. So is there a timing factor to this? So you're saying fairness is irrelevant to certain situations. Does empathy become more important in the relationship based on a situation like we have now with the coronavirus and the need for managers and leaders to be more socially aware, or is it irrelevant to time? Do people look at it consistently in the same way?
In my mind, it's irrelevant. I think the big gaps in empathy in organizations showed up and were, glaringly obvious because of COVID and the impact on people's lives. And so I think that just showed what a big gap there was in people's skill to care.
So does empathy come out in your research as a relatively common area for the relationship to be improved?
Oh yeah,
Leader-follower?
absolutely.
Okay.